on finishing well, because I never thought when I was considering the concept of finishing well that it would have anything to do with IRA and Marshall. But today, you're going to find out how IRA and Marshall have everything to do with finishing well to some extent. For a lot of folks out there who've been investing in these things, I think they're actually called IRAs, not IRA. Am I right?
That's correct. Stands for Individual Retirement Account.
But Hans, again, we are with certified financial planner Hans Scheil, who with Cardinal Guide. But Hans has a phenomenal story that I really would love him to share on how to, essentially Marshall introduced you to this guy that had something to do with the Las Vegas slot machines or something.
Let's see how quick I can tell this story. And I'm not known for being quick on stories. But so Marshall came to me. He owned Medicare Supplement. His wife did. And my brother handled their business, told him I could help him out with long-term care, went down and met with him. We became very dear friends. He mentored me in a lot of ways. And he was a retired dentist, had accumulated some very nice resources, very concerned about long-term care. He was paying a very large premium for a traditional long-term care policy he had bought like 15 years earlier, and they had raised the premium so substantially. He was going to keep it, but he really wanted to hear from me about a way to pay for long-term care out of his IRA. My brother had gone over that much with him. So we sit down and we start talking and went through a series of meetings and discovered that the best thing he could do was use part of his IRA, about $200,000 worth of his IRA, and his wife Elizabeth's IRA, to transfer to an insurance company that to purchase about $600,000 worth of long-term care benefits, and to do it all with IRA money. It's a little more complicated than that, but that was the general theme. He went for it, and over several meetings was very happy. And as we went through this process, he was talking and validating. This is a very smart guy, and he had followed Ed Slott on public TV. And Ed Slott is America's IRA advisor. I had heard of Ed Slott before, and Ed Slott was famous for charging people like me a couple $1,000s to go to a 2-day seminar to learn to become experts on IRAs. And I really thought I already was an expert on an IRA, given that I'm a certified financial planner and CFP, and probably had a little arrogance on my part that, what's this guy going to teach me? But anyhow, Marshall gave me his copy that he got off of public TV of Ed Slott's book. Took it to the beach. This was the summertime. Read the thing over a weekend. Came back, and I called Marshall up, and I said, I've read the book. Thank you very much. I'm coming back to you. I'm going to want more money when I come back. Okay? So he was...
Yeah, well, you read it. Yeah, you want more money?
Well, only in your best interest. And so what I did when I came back is I showed him what I had learned in Ed Slott, is that what's left of his IRA, which was still pretty substantial, it was over $300,000 that was left in there. I said, if when you pass away and your wife passes away, you're going to do such a good job investing this, you're going to hand your kids a $300,000 IRA deposit. What do you think your kids are going to do with that when they're the beneficiary of this? And he said, I can tell you exactly what they're going to do. They're going to say, send me a check. And I'm going to say, well, wait a minute. You got to pay 40% of this in taxes. So, if you're going to get a $100,000 check, this guy had 3 sons, you're only going to get $60,000. And you know what their kids are going to say is, send me the check, send me the $60,000. So he looked at that. He was a little concerned about that. So what we decided to do is take the $300,000, distribute it over both he, Marshall, and Elizabeth's lifetime.
That's the IRA and Marshall we've been talking about.
Yeah, that's the $300,000 IRA.
Right.
Okay. And distributed over his lifetime and her lifetime, and they got $20,000 a year, which they didn't need. Okay. But it met all their minimum distributions. And then after we paid the taxes on the $20,000, we used the remaining money to buy a life insurance policy that pays off at their second death for $300,000. And so what it really amounts to is they used the IRA distributions, paid the taxes during their lifetime, and then his children were each able to get their benefit, which she's still alive. And when she passes away, the kids are going to get $100,000 each tax-free.
Yeah, they're getting $300,000 without paying any tax. But the beauty of this story, if you look inside of it from my perspective, is here's this guy by the name of Ed Slott. And Ed Slott is using what he's learned to help other financial planners. And now you learn, wow, I just really helped this man do a wonderful strategy of being able to take care of his family, which really is very biblical. I mean, is being able to take care of your family and leave an inheritance for your children. But you were so impressed, you signed up for the class.
Well, and I told Marshall that. I said, I'm going to use a couple $1,000s out of the money that I earn off of this additional insurance, and I'm going to go to Ed Slott's class. Well, then I went to Ed Slott's class, and then I finished the thing, and I decided to sign up for his becoming an Ed Slott groupie or an Ed Slott Elite Master Advisor. I go twice a year. This man was so full of wisdom and just that one idea, but he teaches me this stuff. And, you know, so I went back and told Marshall that. So this whole story originated like 6 years ago. So when it came time to write this chapter of the book, I couldn't do anything but just dedicate the whole thing to Ed Slott. I mean, I'm reprinting my earnings. I mean, most of the rest of the book, I don't really attribute things in there because a lot of this is just wisdom that I've learned. But this whole chapter in this section, which you can download at our website, cardinalguide.com, I'll give you this stuff. I don't even
Right,
need to
there's the
sell it.
beauty. You know, you don't have to pay $2,000 to find out this stuff from Ed Slott or even read the whole book, which I can't even imagine that's a page turner. But anyway, if you go to cardinalguide.com right now, look at the 7 worries. One of those is IRA. You can download the PDF and you get this stuff. But getting inside that IRA idea, and a lot of people have some concept of an IRA. But one of the things that you hadn't thought about studying was the payout side of, you know, how do people get this money and the taxes involved? Because obviously Ed Slott was the CPA. And so this is something that he had developed with that understanding.
Exactly. I mean, that's really his teaching. He doesn't teach you how to get money in a 401k. You don't need to be an Ed Slott or an even CFP like me to get money put in an IRA tax efficient. You just follow the IRS guidelines and put aside money. The real trick with these is getting them out with having them all eaten up with taxes and getting them out at the right time. And then if you try to avoid taxes for your whole lifetime or postpone taxes, and then you leave a big balance there at your death, and then you leave your children as the beneficiaries, your children are going to be in the same situation you were in your 40s or 50s, is if you could have a hunk of money that could come along, you don't really care how much tax you pay on it. You need it to pay for things like education and bills and, you know, pay off debts. I mean, people, so the real sad thing is creating a tax bomb at the end of an IRA. So what Ed Slott's expertise is, and he teaches people like me how to legally get money out of your IRA and to do it in the most tax efficient manner and to do it in line with my client's wishes, which they're all different.
Right, but prior to that, which I think is notable, and probably would have been my strategy based on my lack of wisdom, was as soon as I, you know, turned 70 and realized that I've got to take something, I would take the minimum because I don't want to pay the tax.
Well, that's where people go, and a lot of financial advisors just advise that. I mean, they're real schooled, and I was schooled before I met Ed Slott on, like, how do we pull out the minimum, because that's going to have us paying the minimum tax. But that's not looking for the long term. That's just looking for the short term. And so this is just one little piece of what I learned in Ed Slott. And so in the book, I don't make it this complicated. I just kind of go boom, 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 and I go through. And I think the second part of this show, we're going to work at really going through those key items that should be of interest to you. What I want to add is that Marshall, in the very end of our relationship together, at least as it exists on this earth, the last meeting I had with him, I had convinced him to go back to his estate planning attorney and meet with him, and I had suggested some changes. Imagine that little old me telling him that his estate planning attorney that he ought to change this, and he agreed with me, but he was not competent and confident enough to go tell the attorney that, so he arranged, he says, you go tell him. So the meeting before Marshall passed away, I mean, this was a matter of a couple weeks. I mean, this is the beginning of November, and he passed away over Thanksgiving. We met at the attorney's office, and I did exactly that. And he made the changes that were all in line with the plan that we had put together for him. They got them all executed. Marshall passed away, and then after he passed away, I helped his son get some money in this other IRA that he was kind of hiding from the family that all went to the Christian missions of the world, getting Bibles into China. And I mean, I don't want to get into all of that. I mean, we're going to talk, but
Welcome back with Cardinal Guide's certified financial planner, Hans Scheil, and we are dancing with IRA. Yes, we've been, or an IRA. And, you know, what happens when this guy Roth wants to break into this dance? What does that mean exactly, Hans?
okay, so what is great about a Roth IRA is it is tax-free.
Really? Roth, my buddy.
Okay, I'm going to tell you the order that I prefer money in. Okay, so the highest thing is tax-free. Then number 2 is tax-deferred. And number 3 is taxable. I mean, those are the 3 states that you can have money in. Okay?
Right.
And a Roth is tax-free. Now, you say, how does that work? Well, it means you've already paid tax on the money before it went in there. So that's the bad part of our Roth IRAs. So in other words, if I'm going to put $6,500 in a Roth IRA this year, I have to have really made $10,000 and paid $3,500 worth of tax to have $6,500 that I put into the Roth IRA. So the money I've already paid tax. Whereas if I went into a traditional IRA and put $6,500, I don't need that $10,000. I could just take $6,500 and deduct it off my income taxes. So I've really never paid tax yet. I mean, so not never. I have not paid tax yet. But with the Roth IRA, I've already paid the tax. Now the money's sitting there. It's going to sit there for several years, and it's going to earn money. I don't pay taxes on that money either inside the Roth. And I don't pay taxes inside the traditional IRA when I earn it. But sooner or later, you got to pay the piper. Okay? And
So getting inside that discussion for a second, which, you know, that's kind of really cool to realize that if you had a Roth IRA, and this here we're talking about investing in an IRA, so we're investing in a Roth IRA, we're not only, since we've paid tax on it, but also the income on the investment is not taxable too, so it continues to grow. How about the traditional IRA, where you put that money in before tax, and it makes income, obviously through interest or whatever, and now you go to get it out, or do you have to pay tax on that?
you got to pay tax on the whole thing, whether
So
it's
the Roth
income
has
or
got
the original money.
a huge advantage then inside of it.
Absolutely. And so there's even a way to convert your traditional IRA to a Roth IRA. And you say, man, everybody's raising their hands out there. Say, well, why wouldn't I want to do that? I can tell you why you wouldn't want to do that.
You got to pay the tax.
You got to pay the taxes now. As soon as you show people the tax bill. Even my CPA, who I work with in my practice, and he also does my own stuff, I was doing this myself. He man, you're nuts. Yeah.
Well, wait a minute.
Explain that
It
to
would
me.
still make more sense to me as I'm sitting there thinking about it. So if you're going to convert your traditional IRA to a Roth IRA, I would imagine you're going to pay the tax off the IRA itself, right? You're going to use that money to pay the tax?
Well, you actually don't want to do that. If you use the money that's in the IRA, it becomes self-defeating. It really doesn't make sense. So in order to do this Roth conversion, is what it's called, to move from a traditional to a Roth IRA, you got to pay the tax now, And you really, to make the numbers work, you need to have the money on the sideline somewhere else. So that's going to rule out a lot of people on these.
But if you do that, what you're now saying is that the income inside the IRA is now, you're not going to pay tax on that, so you are ahead of the game.
Yeah, and the distributions, the whole thing. And you also have no minimum distribution, which we're going to get to in a sec. It's
So
tax-free money.
Dancing with Roth is a lot of
It's
fun.
It's wonderful. And see, we could put a multi-year plan together for people, especially people that, like are in your 50s and 40s, any people in their 60s, because you're still a little ways away from minimum distributions at 70 and a half. We can put together a plan and do this over several years and really create tax-free income in retirement.
So when am I required to start this minimum distribution
Okay,
stuff?
so now we're talking only a traditional IRA, which is what most people have, beginning at age 70 and a half. Okay, and the government doesn't make anything easy. I mean, why couldn't it just be 70 or 71? They just got to throw that half in there just for fun, okay? At one point in my career, I sent people 70 and a half birthday cards. Happy 70 and a half birthday card. And what's also kind of funny while we're on this is I just turned 59 and a half on January 2nd of 2018 because my birthday is July the 2nd, 1958. And so the young people in my office wished me they said, man, you can now pull money out of your IRA and you don't have to pay a penalty. I said, whoopee. But anyhow, back to serious business. Where were we?
Now, we were talking about being 70 and a half and getting out that where you actually.
Okay, so you're 70 and a half, and it's actually April 15th of the year following the year you turn 70 and a half. You got that? I want you to spit that back. So just for simplification, sometime around when you're 70 and a half, you can call me for the specific thing. Sometime when you're around 70 and a half, you have to start taking money out of your traditional IRA, and the government wants you to do that so they can collect the taxes. Okay? They don't want the whole world accumulating money in IRAs and they can never get their taxes on it. So they're saying if you don't do it sooner, by 70 and a half, now you're on the government's plan. It's a little bit complicated. I'm not going to try to teach people that on the air, but you could give me a call or somebody like me a call, and we could just lay that out, like how much money that is relative.
When can you, or ideally, I don't even know if it's ideally, but you can obviously begin to get your money out of that at age 65?
59 and a half.
Oh, like that's why you got your 59 and a half birthday.
Yeah, you can start taking money at 59 and a half and paying taxes on it. You have to start taking some money by 70 and a half.
April 15th afterwards.
Yeah, it's about 4% a year. Let's just try to make things general.
So what you do with that, between those two dates, is try to help somebody maximize the long-term plan, so to speak, of both how do I get this money out and pay the least amount of tax, but also not burden my family with tax and things we talked about, because your heir is going to end up paying the tax. Somebody's going to pay the tax on this money sooner or later, right?
Absolutely. And so, I mean, what you just said is what we do, you went through that between these two ages. Here's the thing I'm going to add to that. It depends on what you want. I mean, a lot of folks are not fortunate enough to be able to say, I'm going to delay this or I'm going to do it. I mean, a lot of folks need to live off of this money. I mean, they've got X amount of money in their 401k. They roll it over into an IRA. They have it invested. And now they got the problem. They don't know how long they're going to live, right? I mean,
not most of us.
Yeah, I mean, you're 65 or 66 or 68. You just retired. You need to live off it. And, and so you're afraid to draw any principal out. You're scared if you got it in stocks. I mean, you got a real problem. And those are the things that we really can sit down and help people with. Is to put some thought and some planning on this. Point being, that any money you pull out of there, you've got to pull out and you've got to pay taxes on it. And then we have to have an eye toward, we got to pull out enough that you can live on, but not so much that you run out of money when you're 77 years old, and then you're looking at your 80s and you're broke, at least as far as your IRA. So it's a real complicated thing. Taxes and distributions, minimum distribution law is just part of it.
Right. You're listening to Hans Scheil, certified financial planner with retirementguide.com, which, again, is where these resources are. And the book is the complete cardinal guide to the complete cardinal guide to planning it for and living in retirement. Today's show, we're talking about IRAs, but all these things mixed together with the 7 worries that are there at the website, as well as podcasts on previous shows on Social Security. What are all they Hans?
Okay. So in the book, Social Security, Medicare, long-term care, IRAs, investments, estate planning and life insurance, and income taxes, all for people 62 plus.
Right, and so all these things kind of mix together, as we've talked about throughout the show. So all those things are there in one resource, or just order the book. You can get the ebook for as little as, I think it's $1.99.
It's inexpensive.
It's inexpensive.
I didn't write the book to make a whole bunch of money writing the book, okay? My publisher needs to make a little something. They put a lot of work into it. I really want to get this information out to people. And what I find when people read the book, they like it. I mean, I guess some people don't, but most people do. And you can download any individual chapter of either book for free. And you could actually construct the whole book for free and download it on PDFs and I guess print it out.
Or so you could spend $2.
Or you could just spend a few bucks. That's not the point. I mean, the point is that I think if you go into this chapter and you read just today, if you download IRAs and you read this, you go to the workbook part and you download that and you read that, what I'd like to think is it'll give you an incentive that you'll want to buy the whole book and you'll want to maybe tune back in and hear some of the other chapters.
Well, the 2 things we have left in the short time we have is beneficiaries and long-term care, and those are 2 huge elements when it comes to IRAs. Is who you make your beneficiaries, what does that look like, and then how does it fit into your long-term care plan?
I mean, so what I'm going to tell you about beneficiaries in the limited time I have, check your beneficiaries. I can't tell you how many people, we help people after somebody's passed away. I mean, we help clients get all this stuff straightened out and get them to our attorney, and just people don't have their beneficiaries the way they would have wanted them. They got somebody they marked down there 20 years ago and whatever. You can have deceased people there. Check your beneficiaries, either at your plan if you're on a 401k or at your, every IRA has a beneficiary on it, okay? And then the next thing we wanted to talk about was long-term care. And I wanted to make a point that long-term care, IRA money is probably the second place that we want to go to make distributions to pay a long-term care bill. So what do you mean by that? Well, the first place, as we said last week on the show, is we're going to go to your Social Security check is going to be your down payment on a nursing home. The second place we want to go is to your IRA money because you're going to be spending it on a tax-deductible medical expense. So more details on that when we get into taxes, but an IRA can be a good source of funds to pay a nursing home bill.
Wow.
And I wanted to add one other thing for our listeners, is I divide my time between my Charlotte office, my Raleigh office, and my Greensboro office, and we work with more than half of our customers over the telephone. We work in all 50 states, so you can really call us in. We can give you advice anywhere in the United States if you're willing to work with us over the phone.
Right, which again is cardinalguide.com. And you see right there all the contact information, as well as order the book, The Complete Cardinal Guide to Planning and Living in Retirement, certified financial planner Hans Scheil. And wow, it's been fun dance with Ira today. Thanks, Hans.
Thanks.